Hi, this is Kim Keenan, co-chair of the Internet Innovation Alliance. It's a broad-based coalition of business and nonprofit organizations working to ensure that every American, regardless of race, income, or geographic location, has access to the broadband internet. And today, I'm talking to Amina Fazlullah, Policy Counsel at Common Sense Media, about their new report, K-12 Digital Divide in the Age of Distance Learning. So let's get right to it. Why did you guys publish Closing the Digital Divide in the Age of Distance Learning?
Well, thanks for having me here. This is such an important topic, and at Common Sense, we've always been committed to giving families and kids the information they need to be able to thrive in the technology environment we live in today. For a long time now, we've been focused on issues around equity regarding connectivity, and especially around the homework gap. Last year, in September 2019, we released a report offering teacher perspectives on the homework gap. And back then, it was really truly focused on, what would happen after school, not for distance learning purposes. And even then, we found that teachers were starting to avoid assigning homework that might require technology at home, because they knew their students didn't have appropriate access, and they found it to be unfair.
Was it true for people regardless of where they lived?
There was certainly a prevalence of this digital divide, the homework gap, for students that were on free and reduced lunch, for students that were low income, for students of color. I think that is something that has existed for quite some time now, this digital divide overall, but then also this particular piece of it, the homework gap.
So what will it take to close not just the homework gap, but really the digital divide?
Yeah, so that's what brings us to our report today. We wanted to be able to scope out what the full extent of the distance learning digital divide looked like. We thought it was critical that policymakers had a fuller picture of how many students were in this digital divide and how many teachers were in this digital divide. So our report takes the most recent numbers that we have available to us to get a better sense of that full picture, as well as costing out what it takes to close it.
So this is my question to you. I mean, is this a divide that only affects certain kinds of kids, right? Kids in urban areas, or does it affect kids in rural areas? And why do we see that divide pretty much in all 50 states?
Yeah, I mean, this divide is across the country. Our report found that there's really no state that is beyond the grip of this digital divide. Even in the states that are doing, quote unquote, the best, it's 1 in 4 students who are left behind in this distance learning digital divide. And it cuts across rural areas, suburban areas, and urban areas. So really, there isn't a geographic area that's left out of this digital divide.
Is there anything about the pandemic that exacerbates this problem for students?
Certainly, now that we've got a shift to distance learning, social distancing measures require for students and their families and for teachers to remain safe, to be separate, right? They can't do in-school classes, or they can't consistently hold in-school classes. And that means that if you want to continue the learning, you've got to have access to distance learning tools like adequate connectivity and an adequate laptop. And in the past, students who didn't have adequate connectivity might be able to cobble together some kind of internet access through other friends, other family, going to businesses, going to libraries or after-school programs to be able to have some kind of after-school access. That's not available to them anymore. They're completely isolated and left in the cold.
Wow, so we're no longer talking about just an after-school homework gap. We're talking about the actual ability to connect to learning at all.
That's right. I mean, all states are experiencing distance learning. We saw that happen in the spring. And when states couldn't adequately provide some kind of distance learning, some of them just shut down learning altogether. They closed classes early.